Hey everybody, it's me, Maxwell Adams, and today I'm going to show you how I build some of Dead Meat's 1/6 scale post-apocalyptic vehicles. This is MacMurray. He was originally designed as a survivalist companion for Heck, but since then he's blossomed into quite the materialist. He's the kind of guy that woke up the day after the apocalypse and decided he didn't have to want to be Kanye anymore, he could actually do it. And this is the car that I originally built for MacMurray. And you know what? It's just not baller enough. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take this shiny, brand new, not quite 1/6 scale blue sports car and turn it into MacMurray's new post-apocalyptic ride. I was looking over some of these photos of the old vehicles and it took me months to make some of these things. But over time I've gotten faster and I guess a lot cockier because I'm going to try and do this next one in 2 days. Oh, come on, it's totally doable. First thing we gotta do is take the whole thing apart, just like the pros do it. The more pieces we remove now, the less we have to tape later. But as you can see, this car is all molded from one piece, meaning that this window is just painted on. That means we can't remove the windshield, so we're going to have to mask it off along with the headlights and the carbon fiber and all the bits that we don't want to paint yellow, which is going to be the color of MacMurray's new car. And yeah, it's a dumb hat, but I like it. These bits here look like they'll be easier just to paint over rather than tape off, so that's what I'm going to do. And once we're done cutting all the tape, we hit the whole thing with some plastic primer so that everything else we do actually sticks to the car. And I should have done this before I sprayed anything, but now I'm going to soften the body of the car and sometimes kind of set it on fire in order to make dents. Please don't do this at home. I am an idiot. It's hot enough, we get something that is not my hand, in this case a rock, and just push it into the soft plastic. And after a couple seconds it hardens again and you've got a nice dent. When I work on these things I like to think about the history of the car and what it's been through. Did it get these dents before the apocalypse, after the apocalypse? Where did this armor come from? How long has it been on there? Have these lug nuts been on the wheel forever? Or are they new? Just sort of the backstory of the car. I feel like it helps keep things semi-realistic. Dead Meat's world is all about excess, but usually it's an excess of trash and garbage and horribleness. And MacMurray, he doesn't want to see those things. He doesn't want to believe that the world is as bad as it is. So he's going to try and keep himself and his car as nice as he can. It's not really going to be that nice, but he's going to give it a go. This is just me putting a crease in the side of the car with a delicious can of beans, hitting the bumpers with some pliers. This is all good therapeutic stuff. And now it looks like we're ready to paint. First we're going to hit the bottom with some dirt, and then we're just going to forget about it for a while. Now we hit the whole thing with some black and then seal it on there so we have a nice bedrock coat. Now it's time for a layer of Maxwell's silver hammered treatment. We're going to spray this whole thing silver and then hit that with yet more acrylic to hopefully create another well-defined layer we can scratch and sand down into. Now it's time for our first coat of yellow. Put that on there nice and thick, and at this point I like to add some other colors into the still wet paint. Sometimes that gives interesting effects. And sometimes you overdo it, and you have to wipe them off with a leaf. Nature's toilet paper. Now I'll spray a little bit of black along the edges, a little bit of silver in some places to represent muck that's flown up from the road, or silver from where the sun has worn the paint away. The broad strokes of weathering. And now, with some silver paint and a dry brush, we're going to hit the parts where there's been, paint chips or major body damage. I have a lot of fun detailing these things and putting in, all the dings and dents where little rocks have flown up off the road or cars have been shot by bullets, but it's easy to go overboard and do too much. So I'm going to try and restrain myself on this one. On the previous MacMurray vehicle, I did an awesome job giving him this peeling clear coat, and then in the end I put so much dirt on the car that you would never know. So I'm going to try not to go overboard on this one with the damage, but he's got a dent in the roof, so we're going to say he's been in a rollover. Give him some scrapes. And even though I felt like the yellow paint I got was expensive, it turns out it was completely worth it. It did a fantastic job of covering up the colors beneath it, which most yellow spray paint I've tried has not done well. Okay, now we're ready to hit this thing with some sandpaper and, some pen knives or keys or fingernails or whatever, and scrape away some of the paint that we have and see if we can dig down to that silver layer underneath. And again, I try to keep this relegated to areas where the car would realistically have been impacting things, or, if people are storing things somewhere, would stuff have been dragged across the car. So, just making up the story in my head of where all this damage came from, I think helps keep it look semi-realistic. And now that the car is pretty banged up, I've decided I'm going to try to give it the same peeling clear coat treatment that MacMurray's old car had, only this time hopefully I won't screw it up. So what I'm going to do is get some of this white chalk medium here and really dilute it and get it on there, and when it's partially dry I'm going to dab it up, and hopefully when I'm done it'll look like peeling clear coat. On the early dead meat cars I did a lot of airbrushing and masking things off. These days I tend to just finger paint and hope for the best. Alright, that's half a day gone and it's time for a second beer. Everyone in Dead Meat's world lives in their car and carries all of their worldly possessions with them, so we need to decide where all MacMurray's stuff goes and what kind of stuff he would carry. I mentioned earlier that this car was slightly smaller than 1/6 scale. Normally that would mean I'd have a hard time finding props to decorate it with, but in this case I've collected a lot of Barbie props over the years, which are also slightly too small to be 1/6 scale. Right here I'm applying some metallic tape, which is supposed to represent MacMurray's attempt at some body work. It's reflective, which is not great for the blue screen, but not to worry, MacMurray is going to attempt to paint over it and match the color of his car. Boop! Time to glue down all of the stuff. I'm thinking about using this piece of wrought iron fence as some sort of hood ornament. Looks better that way, I think. Let's glue this thing in here. Why did I do that? What is that? And now we're 3 beers in, and it's time for a fortnight break. We end day 1 with all the big pieces nailed down and Mod Podged in place so they don't go flying off the first time we drop this. Day 2 is going to involve a lot of painting. Here I am mixing up some not quite black paint so that I can get back in and repaint the pieces of carbon fiber and the vents and the dark things that we covered up with the yellow paint. And I'm going to dab some of the black paint up around the edges of the windows so that it helps them look scuffed up and dirty. And I've decided to glue some of these off-brand Legos onto the bottom of the shopping cart so that they look like brackets or something where the wheel parts connect. That bottom part of the shopping cart where the wheels are? That part. I've also decided to use the hinges on these tiny clothespins to act as door hinges that attach the cart to the car itself. Now I use my really dusty, disgusting printer to print out some public domain artworks and a custom license plate. I even out any uneven black areas with a pencil, glue down the paintings that MacMurray has borrowed from local Los Angeles museums, and put the headlights back in. Then I take my pencil and I just run it along all the creases and the seams in the car. I used a Sharpie on some of the cars, but I feel like the pencil is a more reliable tool when it comes to drawing on plastic and paint. Here I'm adding some red and white paint from whatever car impacted the side of MacMurray's ride. But I keep at it until I'm satisfied, and then I just smother the whole thing with more acrylic sealer. Most of what we have left to do now is just a series of washes, and I like to start with a little bit of road grime. All of the washes take a long time to dry, so I leave the car sitting in the sun for a long time, and while it's there I can't help but just walk around and stare at it, and it's a good opportunity to make sure that I'm actually satisfied with what I'm doing and I don't want to make any big changes. Now I'm going to mix up some rust color and put some rust on the few places on the car that I want to have rusty bits. And then I'm going to lighten up that rust paint and turn it into sort of mud for a really uneven mud wash. And then we wait. And now I'm putting the car back together, but it turns out back when I was warping the pieces, I warped them so much that the bumpers aren't really fitting back on the way they should. Fortunately, after a few minutes of pushing and gluing and twisting screws, I managed to get it all back together. So now I'm going to take it out back and flip it over and make sure the bottom is squared away once and for all. Just get some black paint and some dirt colored paint on there so that I can start paying attention to the tires. And while I'm down here, I'm going to give the wheel wells and the bottom of the car another directional spray of road grime. Yeah, road grime. I was using my 1/6 scale license plate template when I made that plate, and that's why it looks kind of weird. I gotta make a smaller one. Here I'm scuffing up the headlights just a little bit with some sandpaper and making a scratch with the edge of this pair of scissors. And now I'm going to liberate the windows. Except the tape really got stuck on there. Left some goop that wasn't coming off very easily, so I ended up rubbing that with some alcohol and a Q-tip, and then I realized my mistake. That window is actually just painted on. So the window started to come off. I ended up making swirling motions and hoping it would look like it was somebody else trying to clean the window. I think it worked out alright. Happy accidents. Let's throw on one final mud wash, and we'll let that dry here around the windshield wipers and help pull some definition out there. And now we're going to tape back over the front window, and we're going to do something, we're going to do an idea I had a few cars ago, but I've never had a chance to try, which is try to make markers for the windshield wipers where they've wiped away the dirt. So we put on some tape, we're going to draw some circles around this coffee mug, and then we're going to take this X-Acto knife and very lightly score the tape along the circles, being very careful not to dig into the windshield itself. Now we have the shape of our windshield wipers in reverse on the glass. Zip! And here on the back I've added these stick-on letters with plenty of lint from my jeans to make sure they're not too sticky. Finally I spray the whole thing from very, very far away with a fine coat of dirt-colored spray paint. And when that's dry, I peel off all the tape here and these letters on the back, and we're left with what look like some dirty windows. And for the end of day 2, it got one last road grime wash, and now we're done.